Hey y'all, I'm the head librarian. My name is Mr. Mall, and you're watching Library Matters. We've got a great episode today. I'm joined by the star of The Tale of Despereaux by Kate DiCamillo, Despereaux Tilling himself. We're continuing to celebrate Black History Month by shining a spotlight on great American authors. This week, we're taking a closer look at Zora Neale Hurston. And we'll be heading back to the American Library Association's Youth Media Awards to find out who won the award and the honors of the Schneider Family Award. This book is given out every year for books that show the disability experience for young children's audience. We'll also take a look at a book trailer for one of the American Indian Youth Literature Award honors, Contenders, Two Native Baseball Players, One World Series, by Tracy Sorrell. And before we go today, we'll introduce a new segment called The Joke's on You. But first, let's see how we do at the Trivia of Books. We caught up with today's special guest, Despereaux Tilling, at Clear Creek Middle School. Thank you for being on the show today, Despereaux. Today, we're going to learn a little bit about great American author Zora Neale Hurston. Jump at the sun in a town called Eatonville, a place where magnolias smelled even prettier than they looked, oranges were as sweet as they were plump, and the people just plain old got along. Lived a girl who was attracted to tales like mosquitoes to skin. Zora was her name. Zora got to loving tales from hearing the townsfolk swap stories at Joe Clark's general store. Oftentimes, Mama sent her over to fetch a little sugar or salt, and Zora would stall, make a 10-minute errand last an hour, just to overhear tales like how that trickster Brer Rabbit always got the best, Brer Fox. Only thing pulled her away was Mama calling, "Zora! If you don't come here, you better!" There were no errands to run, and Zora couldn't get an earful of tales. She'd make up her own. She'd fashion dolls from scraps she'd found. A loose doorknob became Reverend Doorknob. The Do Not Touch Pears scented soap was carved into Mr. Sweet Smell. Ears of corn were hewed into Miss Corn Shuck and Miss Corn Cob. Zora had stories to tell, and stories needed characters. And when Mama sent Zora and her stories out of the house, Zora would perch herself atop their gatepost, calling out to travelers, "Don't you want me to go a piece of the way with you?" If a car stopped, Zora would climb right in. She'd have these people laughing like she was storytelling on Joe Clark's porch herself. Then, half a mile or so later, she'd hop out and stroll on home. Now, back then, some folks called storytelling telling lies. And if Zora's preaching papa got home from church and caught her spouting them, he'd give chase lightning quick. Even Zora's grandma aimed to sting her backside, but never could. Not with Mama's arms stretched wide as tree limbs. Truth was, Mama approved of Zora's storytelling. She didn't fancy the idea of her children tilling land, so she encouraged Zora to jump into sun. You might not land on the sun, but at least you get off the ground. Well, fact is, Zora clung to those words tighter than Brer Fox would have clung to Brer Rabbit if he'd ever been able to catch him. Zora needed him too, because one day Mama got herself a chest cold that wouldn't get better. Then, one September evening, Mama closed her eyes for the last time. Zora and her sister and brothers were so sobbing-hearted that even the house seemed to mourn. 2 days later, Zora's only sister and an older brother headed back to school. Papa was already out on the road preaching. His boys seemed manageable, but his tale-telling girl was too much for him to worry about. So 2 weeks after the funeral, he shipped Zora off to Florida Baptist Academy boarding school. Zora dug her nose in books, intent on reaching the sun. It was what Mama had always taught her to do, after all. Then, her papa got a new wife who was stingier than a peacock. Zora's stepmother tight-fisted their money, school fees went unpaid, and back to Eatonville Zora went. To hear Zora tell it, back home, the walls were gummy with gloom, and her little brothers in ragged, dirty clothes. This was wrong, and Zora made it known. Fussing and fighting commenced from the kitchen to the gatepost. Finally, her stepmother pointed to the door, and out stomped 14-year-old Zora down the dusty road. Though friends spared a pallet for sleeping, there wasn't time for Zora to be pondering the capers of Brer Rabbit. She had to earn her keep, and she was better at storytelling than holding a job. She was fired from maid jobs for reading the employer's books instead of cleaning. She up and quit babysitting her oldest brother's children. He quit on his promise to let her go back to school. For 12 long years, she traveled, job to job, Florida to Baltimore, in and out of schools. Zora was miserable, except for when she spooned out Eatonville trickster tales to whoever sop 'em up. And sakes alive, folks were hungry. The son, however, was getting antsy waiting on Zora, so he called down saying, "Ain't you supposed to be meeting me up here?" Reckon Zora was getting antsy too. How was Zora to jump all the way to Old Big Yellow? By doing what made her happiest. And Zora was happiest at school, hearing those stories. In Baltimore, 26-year-olds couldn't go to public school for free. So Zora told a tale of her own. She chopped her age to 16, then plunked herself down in a high school classroom. Even though she had a lot less money than the other students, Zora walked through the halls like her shoes were lined with gold. The girl was back in school, woo-wee. The son waited patiently for 2 more years until she graduated, and called out, "Jump, Zora." So she did, to Howard University. The best part? All those years of tearing around Joe Clark's and making up tales out of corn husks paid off. She shared her tales with the director of the Stylus, the college's literary club, and was offered membership. Zora not only wrote for their magazine, but the door opened to other events where she met successful writers like W.E.B. Du Bois, who wrote a book she loved, The Souls of black folks. Soon she got to thinking, I want to be a famous author too. So Zora jumped again. She got herself a typewriter, and her fingers got to tapping, and all her Eatonville memories poured into them pages. One of her stories was even about a little girl sitting atop a gatepost. Though Zora loved her schooling, she found she loved writing more. And at that time, new writers who wanted to get published went to one place. So in January 1925, Zora made her way to New York City. As in Eatonville, folks welcomed her. During the day, she listened to book discussions at the library or lectures at the YMCA. Come nighttime, Zora'd be swinging in Harlem, where Count Basie or Fats Waller pounded on the piano, and folks danced the Charleston. Once her feet were too sore for one more kick, Zora would hold court, surrounded by writers like Arna Bontemps, Fannie Hurst, and her best pal Langston Hughes. Langston's poetry jumped in the sun for sure. If Zora's stories held the ears of those great writers, surely her mama was right. Zora could really reach the sun, too. That spring, Zora jumped again. She mailed a handful of stories to a magazine's literary contest. Her words were so alive that the judges saw the moss on the trees, smelled the sawgrass in the Everglades, and heard the men chanting on the railroad. Then, those judges began chanting Zora's name. A fancy college heard about Zora's storytelling and offered her admission. But if there was one thing Zora had learned, it was that school was expensive. She didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. Zora was doubtful. Jump, Zora, Mama's words say. And wouldn't you know it, her jumping paid off. Barnard College offered her a scholarship. It wasn't much. Friends helped out. Zora put together a collection of tales from home called the Eatonville Anthology, and earned a bit from that too. For the first time in all her schooling, Zora was able to stay in school. For her very last semester, Zora had one big project left to do: fieldwork for her anthropology class. Anthropology is the study of humans and their behavior. Her professor, Dr. Boaz, suggested that Zora collect Negro folklore. Now, folklore includes stories and beliefs passed down from generation to generation, exactly like the ones told at Joe Clark's. Shucks, Dr. Boaz might as well have asked Zora to go down to Joe Clark's for some sugar. She had heard Brer Rabbit's adventures, and why the squinch owl screeched, since she was a baby. How many lumps of sugar had she fetched to hear about High John the Conqueror? Or how many times had her mama called her Zora? Of course she'd go collect some stories. Zora looked up at the sky. I'm coming for you, son. The sun smiled down. I know. Zora drove into Eatonville, and even after she'd been gone for 22 years, townsfolk still recognized her. Well, if it ain't Zora Hurston. They rattled off questions before she could even answer them. You gonna stay a while? Several months. Where you gonna stay? I reckon. What you up to? I come to. Zora, at last, sat on Joe Clark's store porch. Townsfolk ate gingerbread, drank buttermilk, and commenced to woofing about John and the Frog, the man who went to heaven, and Jack and the Devil. As the menfolk plucked their guitar strings, it's said that even the moon dipped lower to get an earful of tales. But outside of Eatonville, folks zipped their lips to the meddling stranger with the notebook and northern accent. To ease their minds, Zora spun a believable tale about her own self. I'm a bootmaker running from the law. Folks then trusted she wasn't just snooping, and offered her a treasure of folklore. Zora's college project became one of her biggest jumps. Even after she graduated, she didn't stop collecting tales. She trekked all the way from Alabama to New Orleans to Haiti and the Bahamas, gathering as much folklore as a leopard has spots. And then she stopped jumping long enough to take her notebooks and tapes and find herself a home in New Gali, Florida. There, on her porch with papers spread out, Zora took her biggest jump ever. She set up her typewriter, and her fingers got to tapping all those tales into books. Then she tapped up her very own stories and made her own books too. Zora, like her mama always dreamed, reached the sun. And now, when you open those books, it's as if you were visiting on Zora's porch, just like she porch visited all those years ago. she'd have offered you a chair and filled you full of High John the Conqueror tales, or told you the talking mule lies she got from the Florida railroad workers. Of course, she'd woof about that old Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox, too. And that sun would have beamed down mightily pleased, just a-listening. What an interesting life she led. Well, it's time to head back to the American Library Association's Youth Media Awards for 2023, which was held last month. Today, we'll be finding out who won the Schneider Family Award, which is given every year to distinguished books that reflect the lives of people with disabilities.
I am now pleased to announce the Schneider Family Book Awards. The Schneider Family Book Awards, donated by Dr. Catherine Schneider, honor an author or illustrator for a book that embodies an artistic expression of the disability experience for child and adolescent audiences. The award, administered by the American Library Association, is given annually for the best younger children, middle grades, and teen books, which honor an author or illustrator for the artistic expression of the disability experience for child and adolescent audiences. The committee selected 2 young children's honor books. Dancing Hands, written by Joanna Q. and Karina Marquez, illustrated by Fran Alvarez, and published by Chronicle Books. And What Happened to You, written by James Catchpole, illustrated by Karen George, and published by Little Brown and Company, a division of Hachette Book Group. The recipient of the Schneider Family Book Award for Best Young Children's Book is Henry Like Always, written by Jen Bailey, illustrated by Mika Song, and published by Chronicle Books. The committee has selected 2 middle grade honor books. Good Different, written by Meg Eden Kuyat, and published by Scholastic Press, an imprint of Scholastic Inc. And Simon Sort of Says, written by Aaron Bowe and published by Disney Hyperion, an imprint of Buena Vista Books, Inc. The recipient of the Schneider Family Book Award for Best Middle Grade Book is The Fire, the Water, and Maudie McGinn, written by Sally J. Pla, and published by Quill Tree Books, an imprint of HarperCollins Publishers. I would like to thank award jury co-chairs Susan Hess and Mary Kate Sobleski and the jury for their hard work. Will you all please stand and be recognized?
Hopefully, you'll get a chance to read some of these excellent award winners. And remember, if you can't find them in your school library, you can probably find them at your county library. I'd like now to share with you a book trailer for Contenders, 2 Native Baseball Players, 1 World Series, by Tracy Sorrell, which won the American Indian Youth Literature Honor for 2023. We're almost out of time for today, but before we go, I want to introduce a new segment called The Joke's on You, where I will tell a joke that has been submitted by one of you out there in the audience. Today's joke was submitted by Matt from West Gresham Elementary. Despereaux, what do you call an old snowman?
Monsieur Moll, I must admit, I do not know.
A puddle. If you have a joke that you would like to hear on an episode of Library Matters, please submit it to the librarian at your school so that they can pass it along to me. Who knows? Maybe you will get to hear a joke of yours told in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we have for the episode. I'd like to thank our special guest, Despereaux Tilling. We learned about great American author Zora Neale Hurston. We learned who won the Schneider Family Awards and Honors for 2023. We got to watch a book trailer for Contenders by Tracy Sorrell, and we introduced the new segment, Joke's on You. Till next time, remember to thank your librarian today and every day. I'll see you next time